It all began after the first month we started dating, and I don't know why I didn't end things right then and there. While I was taming a shower, he looked through all of the photos on my laptop and yelled at me cause I still had photos of me and my ex. I didn't even remember, cause I don't look at those photos and I guess I was too lazy to delete them. Also, I don't use that laptop so often since it's slow.
So, yeah.
I wasn't being sentimental. I've always been a nosy person and I admit I stalked his wall, his exes, even his parents, but it was all public info. I've been alone with his laptop / phone etc. but I've never ever even thought about reading his private conversations. I wouldn't do that to anyone. He doesn't care, though. He memorized my iPad password and he read everything, including some really private posts on Reddit. He yelled at me and broke up with me. He occasionally lurks in my Facebook account, because I'm dumb and I'm always like, no, he wouldn't do that again, but he always does. Today I was logged on our shared laptop and I saw in my FB app that there was some activity going on 40 minutes ago, while I was taking a shower. I looked the Chrome history, but he had deleted everything. I lost it and I started crying and he had the audacity to blame me for his trust issues and said that there is something I'm hiding, since I'm reacting this way. I tried to explain I have nothing to hide, but it's just horrible to feel uncomfortable at home. I can't even sleep properly anymore because I'm nervous if he'll decide to randomly read my messages. He scrolled maybe months of my FB searches, which is really embarrassing, and yelled at me again. He said I must be hiding something since I'm so upset. I don't hide anything, and I never gave him a reason not to trust me. Once he dumped me and I grabbed a beer with an old friend and he found out. Blamed me for cheating on him and even complained to my mother. I go to therapy every week, not only because of him, I have other issues. There was this group session and I met a boy who has similar problems to mine and I felt that finally I'd have someone outside therapy to talk to. He's not my type and I didn't like him in a romantic way. I just felt we could be friends, but my boyfriend found out we've talked once, because he was snooping again OFC. And again yelled at me. He said I was a cheater and that's why he had trust issues. I've always been faithful and I didn't deserve this. I changed all my passwords, but I'm tired of feeling uncomfortable in my own home. He went out and told me I deserve this and he's right to invade my privacy and I have no right to be mad. I don't know what to do anymore. I finally picked up some courage and ended this pathetic excuse of a relationship. 2 days ago he came with his mother, OMG, to collect his stuff and also took the laptop he gave me as present. Which was pathetic. I am a 36-year-old male, my wife passed away 2 years ago. I have an 11-year-old son named Sean. I'm doing okay, with money. I have a stable income and support system. I have a friend named Kate, we've been together since we were kids. She's like a sister to me, although she tends to boss me around. She's introduced me to her female friends hoping that I'll settle down again. I told her I have other priorities and I'm required to focus on Sean and his health, he's diabetes. Kate thinks there's something wrong with me, but not everyone's circumstance is the same. I started noticing a pattern in her behavior after she introduced me to a friend of hers. She'd tell me to leave Sean at home when we hang out and meet her friends. She'd tell me to take down any pictures that have my son and wife in it because ladies will assume that I'm a single dad or still married and that'd limit my chances in dating. I told her to knock it off, and she said that she was looking out for my social life, saying I'm ruining it and exhausting myself. I stopped talking to her for days. Then I decided to let it go. She's been insisting on bringing her friend to visit me with other friends. I agreed to have them as guests. Kate suggested I take Sean to stay with a relative since it'll be adult dinner, but I refused. He was comfortable in his home and didn't want to go. Kate was at my place before her friends arrived. I checked on Sean and told him to tell me if he needed anything before he went to sleep. At 12:30, while I was sitting and just starting to chat with Kate's friend while Kate kept blinking at me with a smirk on her face, I got a text message from Sean telling me he wanted to use the bathroom but the door handle was stuck and he couldn't open the door. I went upstairs to check. Kate followed me. I found that the door was actually locked. I was confused. I asked Sean and he said he didn't lock it. I started looking for the key. That's when Kate quietly handed it to me saying she took it. I was stunned. I opened the door for Sean, then I asked her why she locked the door. She said that lied to her friend about me not having kids, and didn't want her to see Sean. She said it was no big deal since he was sleeping, but I was furious. I started yelling at her as she kept shushing me. Everyone started leaving after I yelled at Kate and cussed her out for doing this. She blew up after her friend left and said I was an idiot cause most people don't mention kids until after months into dating, and that I didn't deserve her help to move on when she thought I was a decent, sane person. I called her stupid and told her to get out of my house. She told me to wallow in my misery and left. Then her friends kept blaming me for making a scene and treating Kate like that, especially since she cooked dinner and helped a lot. I have looked up career possibilities as a moving military girlfriend, maybe someday wife. My boyfriend really wants me to go with him, but I don't know if it's the best thing for me, career-wise. Currently, I'm in school, going for my bachelor's degree. I only have 2 years left, and after that, I plan on getting into law school. He's in the Air Force, stationed in Texas, which he's been here for about 3 years now. We have been together for 1.5. Knowing that he's going overseas, it's possible he'll be stationed in different countries for a few years. What's holding me back is my career. Law school isn't meant to be jumping around from country to country without knowing where you'll land permanently due to the bar exam. Also, we aren't married and I don't know if I should risk my career, which I've been very committed to being a lawyer, for a future that's a bit warped. I did see that I can become a programmer and it'll be versatile, but that's not what I truly want to do. Sure, Hawaii seems amazing, but more of a 3-year-long vacation with a questionable future. We both agreed that long distance wouldn't work since I would be all the way in Texas. Is it bad that I want to go but don't want to risk it all just to be put in a bad situation of misery? Also, if I do go, I'd have to transfer schools and go to school in Hawaii. That's already a very high tuition that has to be paid by FAFSA and student loans. Quite frankly, I'm also afraid that I won't be able to sustain myself separately from my boyfriend's income. I like to feel independent and know that I can fend for myself. Maybe that's a pride issue? I don't know, but I do know it's a high standard of living. That also adds to the jumble of thoughts. I will also admit, I am fairly close to my parents. In my Hispanic household, we have always been very united. I currently work with them in their small business because it benefits the both of us. I can go to school with a flexible schedule and still make good income, and they have a stable employee. That's something my boyfriend never really knew growing up. He's a Kansas boy, from a small town, with parents who split up when he was little. I feel like he doesn't understand how hard it'll hit my parents and I, being far away for 3 years. It also bothers them a bit that I'm not married but willing to leave not knowing what'll happen in the relationship. I have been with my partner for 7 years. We initially met online, and after meeting in person a few times, and realizing our affection for one another, we found it promising to move in together. I moved from California to Pennsylvania to be with him throughout graduate school. All was seemingly well during this time. I have never really had any reason to not trust him. I encouraged him to very much so, to try his best to make friends, or to explore hobbies on his own outside of the various ones we share, because I have my own passions. And I found we connected most when we met in the middle through conversations about these passions, through the act of explaining or showcasing what we've taken in or learned. Throughout these 7 years, he has struggled with very low self-esteem. And though I don't necessarily think of myself as the pillar of self-love, the depth of mine doesn't reach the low perception of his self-value. Because of this, he has seen and stopped seeing both a counselor and a therapist, and has been on medication to help for the last 6 months. Things were seemingly well between us, and continued to be pretty fluid. We continued to share things, and take long walks, and were pretty open-ended about where we stood in the relationship. If one was feeling a bit of an ebb, the other would pick up more of a share, and vice versa. However, things took a bit of a dip about 2 days ago when I felt the ebb and asked him about it. Initially, he said there was really nothing wrong. And perhaps I was just feeling this way because with our schedules we haven't been able to see one another for long periods of time like we are used to, which is true. But the feeling continued to irk me, and when I asked about it a second time, he confessed to me. He had begun talking to another girl from another country via Instagram direct messages. And though things between she and him never crossed the boundaries of platonic friendship, he really loved the initial rush of someone asking him questions about his favorite movie, his favorite album, his favorite book. All things he and I already know very well about one another. I asked if he'd sent any selfies, or anything risque, and he said no, though I can't confirm, because he deleted the messages. A good deal of me believes him, because of how open he was about the initial conversations to begin with. We slept apart, and I just felt really confused the entire night, because I couldn't really resonate with wanting that sort of attention from someone else. If anything, his yearning for that type of attention sort of hurt. It felt like I wasn't doing enough, or giving enough. The next morning, though I don't have an Instagram, and am not on the app, I went to check his using the desktop version, and found that posts where he once called me the love of his life, or a specific post with a gift I gave him that once said, "Greatest gift from the greatest girl," were still on his profile, but the words, girlfriend, or love of my life, were completed erased. With this realization, my confusion and hurt turned to very real heartache. I called him and asked if he had deleted these words from the specific posts, and with shame, he said yes, he did. When I asked why, he said it was because he just didn't want the attention from the girl asking him about himself to be disrupted if she found out he was in a long-term relationship. I guess this is where I asked the obvious and questioned why someone who is just asking about your favorite books, movies, etc., would be driven away by the fact that you have a girlfriend. And he said he didn't know why he did it, and that it was a massive mistake. At the risk of seeming toxic, and I will take full accountability for seeming so or being so, I asked him to please deactivate his Instagram for the time being while we sort through this, his Twitter as well. He did, and though I was feeling a bit of relief about that, I couldn't help but feel a bit saddened that he didn't choose to do that on his own for the benefit of our relationship. He had to wait for me to ask. Which again, just made me feel like such a toxic and controlling partner. Two things I always strive to be so far from. When he got home from work, we discussed everything at massive length, and he continued to swear up and down that these conversations pertained strictly to music, movies, and books, and he didn't have interest in her. Just interest in the initial rush of the attention he was receiving. We read a few articles, and he broke things down to me as his self-esteem has never been lower. Despite his career as a doctor being at a high, and his finances in order, he felt things with his music weren't taking off. And with that came a feeling that he wasn't special, and it was nice for someone to make him feel that way. I felt shame and asked him if I wasn't doing enough or giving enough to him to make him feel that way. He said, I defiantly was. But my love, and attention and affection, became a pillar he could rely on, and got used to, so with new attention came a rush. And he liked that. I asked him if he wanted to be single, and find that rush in dating new people. And he kept insisting that that's so far from what he wants. He wants to remain a couple, and do all he can to work on these things together. Though I can't help but correlate that feeling he enjoys with the feeling of a first date. Which hurts, of course. I told him I didn't really see how we could move past this because there was nothing much for me to make an attempt to work on moving forward. This seems to be a self-stemming problem that I emphasize with, but just don't want to be on the receiving end of the counter effects. So though it is incredibly uneasy to begin to think of how difficult it'll be to begin again, it is just as difficult to think about how difficult it would be to stay and try to rebuild back up an issue that I feel like just a bystander. When it comes to this has all been very painful, and if this comes to an end I just want it to be as civil and as possible. He deserves to love himself, but not at the expense of the love we have between us. I deserve love that is stable and comforting, and not laced with newfound paranoia. Despite this all, my heart is still very much in this, of course, and he has been very vocal about how it was just one mistake. Nothing happened, we can work through this, etc. And I secretly keep hoping he will make a step, any step really, to showcase these words and implement action, seek a new therapist. Find the two of us a relationship counselor, buy a book on self-help or on how couple conquer affairs, anything at all. Without me having to be the one to ask him. I just want him to have that yearning that he continues to say he has, but instead of saying it, I was him to show me. That makes me irrational or just plain dumb. I believe to be in a state where I can handle either answer. Or something completely different just the same? Do all think I'm blowing something completely out of proportion? Given how this was an exchange of conversation between him and another girl for just a few days. And his erasure of me on his profile was only for about 2 days? This has been a first in this relationship. This has been a first in my life, truthfully. I just felt completely vulnerable and isolated.